Let me ask you something before this story begins. And I need you to answer it honestly. Not out loud, but in that quiet place inside your chest where the truth lives. Have you ever been someone's burden? Not because you chose to be, not because you wanted to be, but because your pain, your very real, very human pain, made people uncomfortable. Have you ever watched the people who were supposed to love you most slowly begin to look at you like a problem they were trying to solve, like an embarrassment they were trying to erase? Because that is what happened to Ifunanya. A mother, a wife, a woman who gave everything she had to a family that decided in the end that she was too much to carry. But here is what I need you to stay for. Because this story does not end with Ifunanya alone and forgotten. No, this story ends with a reckoning so complete, so devastating, that the daughters who threw her away will spend the rest of their lives paying for it. And the woman who came to destroy her, she had been waiting 20 years for this moment. Stay with me, because what God allows to happen in secret, He will expose in the open every single time. You are watching Tales by RM. If you are new here, subscribe right now and turn on your notification bell. Every week, we bring you stories like this one. Stories that will shake you, move you, and remind you that life is rarely what it appears to be.
The town of Ugwachi was the kind of place where everyone knew your name. And in a place like that, reputation is not just a luxury. Reputation is currency. It is the ground you walk on. It is the air your children breathe. In a modest but well-kept compound at the edge of the main road lived the Okoye family. Mr. Okoye, a quiet, principled man who repaired electrical faults for a living, his wife Ifunanya, and their 3 grown daughters, Ada, the eldest, Kamsi, the middle, and Nkiru, the youngest. On paper, they looked like an ordinary family. But inside those walls, something had been quietly breaking for years. Ifunanya had a condition. It had no clean name in Ugwachi. The neighbors called it the sickness that comes and goes. The doctors called it a periodic mental illness. Episodes that arrived without warning, sometimes months apart, sometimes weeks. And during those episodes, Ifunanya would wander. She would speak to people only she could see. She would laugh at things no one else heard. And then, just as suddenly as it came, it would pass, and she would return, tired, a little lost, but fully herself. Mr. Okoye understood this. He had understood it from the beginning. He had married her knowing, he had stayed knowing. Every time an episode came, he was there, patient, steady, present. Knowing, he never looked at her with shame, not once. His daughters were a different story. Ugwachi, Ada, Kamsi, and Nkiru had grown up watching their mother and decided somewhere along the line that she was a problem. Not a person who was struggling, a problem. And Ada, the eldest, 28, and a bank officer, had built a carefully curated life around the idea that she was nothing like her mother. She dressed sharply, she spoke carefully, she had a fiancé from a good family who didn't yet know the full picture, and Ada intended to keep it that way. Kamsi was 26 and worked as a teacher. She was the one who complained most openly. Whenever her mother had an episode, Kamsi would sit in her room with her earphones in and turn the volume up. She called it not having the emotional bandwidth. And Nkiru, 23, the youngest, had simply learned to pretend the episodes weren't happening. Pastured Sultanis from the Hap in Chirojunze Hills, she would greet her friends at the gate and step over her mother's wandering in the compound as though she was stepping over a puddle. It sounds cruel when I say it like that, and it was. But these girls had convinced themselves it wasn't. knowing they had told themselves so many comfortable lies for so long that the lies had started to feel like truth. The worst episode happened on the day of Nkiru's graduation party. Neighbors had gathered, music was playing, food was on the table, and then Ifunanya, in the middle of an episode no one had seen coming, walked out into the compound in her night clothes singing. Ada pulled her inside. Kamsi disappeared into the kitchen. Nkiru stood frozen in humiliation, watching her classmates whisper behind their hands. That evening, the three sisters sat in Ada's room with the door closed and made a decision. Something had to change.
The plan came to Ada first. And once it was in her head, she turned it over carefully, the way she turned over all her plans, until it felt like something reasonable, something justified. Their mother needed treatment, real treatment, not just the medicines the local clinic prescribed, proper extended care in a facility in another state. And so the daughters went to their father with their case already assembled. Papa, Ada said, her voice measured and careful, "We love Mama, but she needs help that we cannot give her here. There is a hospital in Enugu. They have handled cases like hers before. They can help her properly. Please." Mr. Ogola was quiet for a very long time. He loved his wife deeply, completely, but he also saw how much strain it had put on his daughters. The withdrawals, the embarrassments they described, the fear in Kira's eyes. And he told himself that the treatment would bring Ifunanya back whole. Better, he said yes. The morning Ifunanya left, she was in a clear period. She packed her bag slowly, looking around the compound as if trying to memorize it. She hugged her husband for a long time. She told her daughters she loved them. She said she would come back well, that she would make them proud. And none of them, not one, could look her in the eyes as she said it. The taxi pulled away, and within the week, the daughters began their next move. Her name was Stella. She had lived 2 streets over for about 8 months, polished, soft-spoken, impeccably dressed. She brought food to the compound just to help out. She fixed things around the house. She listened to the daughters' frustrations over tea. She made herself indispensable. The daughters did not plan it all at once. It grew, the way bad ideas often grow, slowly, and dressed in something that felt like sense. First, they hinted to their father that the house was lonely. Then, they hinted that Stella was kind. Then, they pointed out how much better things had been running since she started coming around. Then, Ada sat her father down and said the thing none of them should ever have said. "Papa, you deserve peace in your own home." Mr. Okore resisted. He said Ifunanya was still his wife. He said she would return. But 3 daughters, day after day, voices soft and filled with calculated compassion, they wore him down. They wore him down the way water wears down stone. He said yes. He married Stella 6 months after Ifunanya left for treatment. Stella was everything Ifunanya was not. Or at least, that is what the daughters told themselves. She cooked elegantly. She dressed the house with new curtains and better furniture. She spoke well at social gatherings and made the Okorian name feel, for the first time in years, like something the daughters didn't have to apologize for. For Ada, Kamsi and Nkiru, Stella was the answer to a prayer they hadn't known they were praying. They stopped waiting for their mother to get better. They stopped asking about the treatment updates. They started calling Stella Mama Stella. Stella supported Ada's promotion application with a gift to the right person. She threw Kamsi a birthday party that the whole neighborhood talked about. She sat with Nkiru for hours, helping her draft her personal statement for a master's program, never once making her feel like a burden. They were dazzled.
They were completely, entirely, willingly dazzled. And in the hospital in Enugu, Ifunanya was getting better. The doctors reported real progress. She was responding well, she was stable, she was learning new tools for managing her condition. She wrote letters home to her husband, to her daughters, and the letters were warm and hopeful and full of love that had not gone anywhere. Nobody wrote back.
The day Ifunanya came home was a Thursday. She had spent nearly 2 years in that facility. 2 years of hard work, of group therapy, of learning to live inside her own mind without fear. The doctors told her she was ready, that she had done the work few people have the courage to do. She came home with a small bag, a certificate of discharge, and a smile so wide it trembled slightly at the edges, the way smiles do when they have been held in for too long. She knocked on the gate of her own compound, longer than usual, perhaps because the wood of the gate felt unfamiliar under her hands. It was Nkiru who opened it, and the look on Nkiru's face was not the look of a daughter welcoming her mother home. It was the look of someone who had been caught. Mama, just that, flat, uncertain, like a word spoken in a language she had been trying to forget. Ifunanya walked in and felt it immediately. The new curtains, the different sofa, a woman's perfume that was not hers. And then Stella walked out of the kitchen and the world became very quiet. Who is this? Ifunanya asked the question calmly. She was a woman who had just spent 2 years learning to stay calm. This is Stella, Ada said, coming in from the hallway. Papa's wife. Ifunanya sat down slowly. His wife? She said it the way you say something when you are trying to understand if you heard it correctly. Mr. Okori came into the room and could not look at her. He sat across from her, shoulders caved inward, and said things like, "The girls felt it was best, and I didn't think you are coming back fully." Ifunanya began to speak, to explain, to ask why, to reach for the family she had gone away to fix herself for. And that is when Kamse stood up. "Mama, I am going to say this plainly because it needs to be said. We are tired, you hear me? We have been tired for years. Do you know what it was like growing up with you? Do you know what you put us through? The parties we couldn't host, the people who laughed at us, the shame, the constant everyday shame of having a mother who wasn't normal." Ada folded her arms. "You are selfish to expect us to just go back to the way things were. Stella has brought peace to this house, real peace, and we are not giving that up." "I am your mother. You are sick," Nkiru said, quietly, coldly. "That is all you were, and we don't have to keep carrying that." Ifunanya looked at each of her daughters in turn. She had come home expecting open arms. She had found closed doors. If this story is already breaking something open inside you, stop and subscribe to Tales by RM right now. Drop a comment below. Whose side are you on? I read every single one. Don't go anywhere, because the next part of this story is the part that will change everything.